mixed use and residential. Corridor 16 plan shows rural transition and neighborhood mixed use, not C3. There is no C3 zoning right now out there. And even the stuff that is out there that is close to it is CU C3, which has conditional use to it. Like most people who moved to Waxhaw, we wanted to get away from the city and raise our children on green space, small town effects, and the surroundings of maybe peppered in farms. And it breaks my heart to watch as developers are allowed to turn our green spaces into Cement City and to transfer Highway 16 into another 74 or South Boulevard or even a 521 corridor. Don't let this happen. Do smarter zoning for this corridor. We have enough gas stations and drive-thrus. Stop and think about the residents that are around it. I am one of those people. It's going to be right across the street from our development of Inverness, and I live right behind them. So please be considerate to the residents. Thank you.
Thank you. Candace DeFinis.
Good evening. My name is Candace DeFinis, and I live at 8313 Willow Branch Drive in Waxhaw. Tonight, my comments are centered around collaboration requests to the Board of Commissioners to update our comprehensive plan and our current pending UDO draft to consider the preservations of our park space. I would request that all park land that we currently have be preserved for the future of Waxhaw. Looking at the comprehensive plan and the recommendations that are laid out associated to Parks and Rec on section 2.6.2, number 2 in the action plan says prepare and update the Parks and Recreation plan to incorporate population growth and estimates for corresponding calculations of facilities needed for the town. Number 3 also says develop a variety of park facilities to accommodate recreational needs for our residents and a wide range of their interests. Number 4 says to develop a balance of both passive and active park facilities to meet the needs and the demands of our population. Number 7 outlines the focus of community scale parks according to the 2012 Parks and Recreation Plan. I would call upon you to utilize the partnership that Dina has already confirmed that the town has with the National Association for Parks and Rec, to utilize their fundraising arm to take action to open our inactive park inventory, to go ahead and take action to preserve the park space that we currently have and look to actively acquire additional park space in order to meet the need of our community and to be able to have additional parks throughout all of Waxhaw to bridge the gap that we have in the deficit of park space. I would also call that we would again, consider updating the comprehensive plan to preserve and conserve the park space, and that we would consider updating the existing draft UDO that's currently pending, that we would preserve and conserve the space that we have and make conservation recommendations to the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, that's it for public comments. At this point in time, I'll entertain a motion to adopt the consent agenda. So moved by Mayor Pro Tem McMillan. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Next up, audit presentation for fiscal year 16-17. John Kapler from Potter & Company, join us. And I'll just, for the sake of the board and the audience, Mr. Kapler did present to the subcommittee consisting of Commissioner Burrow, Commissioner Burns, and myself a draft of this to make sure that there were no management concerns. And so with that, I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah. Thank you, Mayor. The items I want to go over tonight are in this presentation that you have. This little folder right here has some graphs in it and that type of thing. I think that they've got on the screen above us. First thing I want to say is just thank you again for giving us the opportunity to be of service to the town. We've seen the growth that's happened here over the years. And we've enjoyed working with your team that you have here. Good getting to know Greg and getting Lisa on board now, and then Ann, she always does an outstanding job. So we look forward to working with them in the future, and thank you again for that opportunity for us to serve the town. The first thing I'd like to go over with is on page 1 of the presentation that is in here. Oh, I got the driver? Sweet. I pressed the button. Nice. Okay. All right. So, if you've got your Superman X-ray glasses on, you can see right here that we are saying that we have issued an unmodified opinion on the town of Waxhaw's financial statements as of June 30th, 2017. An unmodified opinion is the highest level of assurance that we can give as certified public accountants that in all material aspects the financial position of the town of Waxhaw at June 30th, 2017 was fairly presented. This is commonly what we refer to as a clean opinion in the audit world. The next thing that we'll have to like to go over is page 2. Page 2 just gives you an idea of the cash and investments from this year to last year for the town at June 30th, 2017 compared to 2016. At the end of this year, your general fund had almost $5.9 million worth of cash and investments on its balance sheet at the end of the year. This year, at the end of last year, it was almost 5.167. Capital Project Fund, which is the other fund that you have within the town in its reporting model, had about $2.3 million worth of cash on hand compared to $2.6 at the end of last year. Coming down below there, it just gives you an idea of what the total fund balance for each fund, capital project in the general fund, was at the end of this year. Capital project funds, fund equity that you got there is basically just reserved for what it says it's reserved for, capital projects. And so the total balance that was in the capital project fund at the end of this year was $2,328,499. Total fund balance for the general fund was $6,461,072. Of that amount, $4,515,808 was the total amount of unreserved fund balance that you had on hand at the end of 2017. So this is the available resources that the town had at June 30th, 2017 that has not been stipulated for some other purpose. Page 4 gives you an idea of what the budget performance was for the town's general fund for this past year. The town had budgeted total revenues for this year of $10,918,158. You actually had a favorable variance in that. You actually had over revenues compared to what you had budgeted for this year. Total revenues in the general fund were $10,940,140, positive variance of $21,982. The town had actually budgeted $11,931,938 in total expenditures for this year, but you only spent $9,796,444. So that was a positive variance of $2,135,000 for this year. Coming down below there, you'll see the transfers that happen in between the general fund and the capital project fund. There's money that sometimes comes into the capital project fund, or into the general fund, that gets sent over to the capital project fund for certain projects. And so after that, your total fund balance for this past year for the general fund increased $894,721 for this year. A couple graphs that we'll go over. Okay. All right, so this just kind of gives you a graphical interpretation of the town's total revenues for the last 5 fiscal years. And as you can see, the biggest revenue source that you have there is ad valorem taxes. This year it was $6,171,067 compared to $5,775,288 at the end of 2017. Other taxes and licenses, that's going to be your sales tax money that comes back into the town from what's collected from the retail side of things, and some other, other taxes and licenses. That increased this year just because of the economic impact and the better economy and everything. We've seen that throughout a lot of our municipalities that we audit as well, so that's No big surprise there. And the other big item that you'll see a big increase in is permits and fees for this past year. So permits and fees this year were $1,304,255 compared to $1,105,433 in the last year. This gives you an idea of what the total expenditures by function for the general fund have been for the last 5 fiscal years. As you can see, it just breaks it down in between general government, public safety, environmental protection, which is basically garbage pickup, and then public service and transportation, economic and community development, and cultural and recreation, and then also the debt service for this building that you have from this year. So that gives you some sort of idea of what made up all the expenditures and where they were and where they came from for the last 5 years. This gives you an idea of what the revenues over expenditures before any transfers between the general fund and the capital project fund for the last 5 years. Before you had the transfers for this past year that went into the capital project fund from the general fund, the total revenues over expenditures were $1,143,696. Next slide that we have up here kind of gives you an idea of the total fund balance and what its different components are and how much of it is as a percentage of your total fund balance that you had this year. You'll see there that your unassigned fund balance that you had on hand at the end of 2017 was actually 70% of your total general fund balance for that. Compared to last year in 2016, it was 65%. Assessed value and assessed levy, we did see previously an increase in your total revenue that you got from ad valorem taxes this past year. Ad valorem levy increased in that regards for this year. So that's the increase. The total levy for this past year was $6,112,438. In this next slide, let's go to the next slide. And this next slide tells you how much, and I always have to brag on Ann and the great job that they're doing in the tax department. We talked about the total assessed levy that was on hand, that $6,143,000 from that side of things. Your collection rate is 99%, which is incredible and outstanding, and I don't know if I can put any other adjectives that I don't say every other year when I come up here and do this. But you're doing a great job. Tax collection department does a great job. Anytime that you get above 95%, that's great. To have it almost 99.65%, that's outstanding. So great job to the diligence and the good teamwork that's being done here internally. So that is all I had to go over with the group this evening. Glad to answer any questions that may come up.
With no questions, I'll entertain a motion to accept the financial statements as presented.
So moved.
Motion from Commissioner Burns. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much. Okay, next up, Commissioner reports. Commissioner Burns. Sorry, I go this way, that way.
I don't have anything tonight.
Commissioner Lee?
Nope.
Commissioner Westlake?
Okay. I'd like to share what I've done the last couple of weeks. I attended the municipal government training in Hickory with Commissioner McMillan and Commissioner Lee, along with the town manager, on January 12th and 13th. I learned a great deal, had an opportunity to meet some of the other newly elected officials in Weddington and Indian Trail. At that time, a group of us decided to get together and see if we could form a partnership to work together on shared issues. Yesterday was our first meeting of this group, which consists of 2 members from each municipality. We met at the new amazing town hall in Indian Trail, and our first agenda item is to work collectively and meet as a group with our state representatives to see if we can work on legislation that would help with our infrastructure and transportation needs. And the meeting minutes were taken, and I will share those with you when they become available. Commissioner McMillan and I also attended the library board meeting last Wednesday night to find out the plans for the new Western Regional Library, which will replace the Waxhaw branch. This new library is to be placed somewhere in the western side of the county. At the work session right before this meeting, the library did come and explain to us where they're at in the process, but Commissioner McMillan and I will stay involved and engaged in that. I did work for the library for 2 years and saw firsthand the services that it provides for our community. Is it not? You can't hear very well? Okay. And I do want to take this opportunity just to share a little bit about the history of the Waxhaw Library for the public who may not be aware, and why I feel it's so important that we keep the library in Waxhaw. The Waxhaw Women's Club, with the help of the Works Progress Administration, established the library in 1937, and Mr. Will R. Steele's furniture store at 107 Main Street. 10 months later, there was a plea in the local Waxhaw paper for donations of books, specifically Western stories for boys, because the demand far exceeds the supply. So it was the residents of Waxhaw who donated books to the library. After outgrowing the space, 2 years later, the library moved across the street to East North Main Street on May 22, 1939, where it remained for 42 years. In the 1960s, the Waxhaw Women's Club, continuing its sponsorship of the library along with the town of Waxhaw, decided it was time for a little decorating, and a new floor was installed. By 1970, the library was open 20 hours a week in the afternoons, Monday through Saturday. The Waxhaw Women's Club still to this day makes annual donations to the library. With the help of former Waxhaw branch librarian Barbara Tinsley, the people of Waxhaw raised the money for a new building. The new building was officially handed off to Director Barbara Johnson on June 17, 1981, from Lola Blackburn, the mayor at the time. It opened in its present location at 509 South Providence Street on September 1, 1981. The building is owned by the town of Waxhaw and has been rented by the county for $1 a month. The Library Association of Waxhaw was founded in the spring of 2009 by Aaron Kirkpatrick and Patricia Kiddo. This association runs the Pre-Loved Bookstore, which opened in February 2010 on East South Main Street. Solely operated by volunteers, all proceeds are designated to construct and operate a new, larger library for Waxhaw. If the new library is moved outside of Waxhaw, the association will then need to decide if it fits their mission to donate their proceeds for a larger Waxhaw library. If you feel, as I do, it is important for the Waxhaw Library to remain in Waxhaw, please stay engaged and share your thoughts to the Library Board and County Commissioners. I will continue to work hard to keep our beloved library in Waxhaw because I believe it provides a vital service to many of our residents. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Burrow?
Yeah, this is more of a question or a concern, but as we talk, and some of the residents made mention of the UDO. The UDO was begun in January of 2015. That's when the contract was let for an 18-month process that's now taken 36 months. And I know that we've had multiple managers. Our new manager has taken a different tack, which is a very efficient tack, and I agree with him. But I cannot stress how important it is to get this process finished. And it shouldn't take that long. Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem McMillan?
Good evening, all. I will just reiterate that Commissioner Westlick, Commissioner Lee, and myself, we did go to Hickory for the Essentials of Municipal Government Training and Workshop, which was, I think, very beneficial to us all. Did attend the library meeting. Tracy's already stated the information regarding that, so please do stay actively involved with the library and what's going on with the library. In addition to the library meeting, I also attended the meeting at Weddington regarding the opioid crisis, along with Commissioner Burns, who was there. That is something that everyone needs to really take note of as to what's going on in our community with the drugs, how prevalent they are, how our children are accessing those drugs, even through our own medicine cabinets. So you need to be mindful and watchful of children, if they're being too quiet, if their attitudes or their demeanor has changed, and just take note of who their friends are. The next meeting is going to be at Parkwood High School at the end of February. So if you have not attended one of those presentations and you know a family who may need to go, I encourage all to attend those meetings and get the information necessary, because it's in our community, it's in our town, it's in our neighborhood, it's in our backyard. And unless you are aware and know the signs, then you may be missing something. So please take note of that. Thank you. Oh, one more thing. Duncan McDonald House, the dates that I will be there. First date in February has changed because we have another meeting that day. So it's going to be February the 6th from 2 to 4 p.m., March the 6th from 10 to 1, April the 17th is 10 to 1, May the 1st is 10 to 1, June the 5th is 10 to 1. I am going to be working with Parks and Rec to get either some Saturday dates or evening dates, and they will be posted within the next week. So if anyone wants to attend and meet me there. You have the dates through June, and then there will be further dates coming. Thank you.
Just keying off of Mayor Pro Tem McMillan's comment about the opiate awareness, I'm going to make this announcement on behalf of Captain Hawk back there. I get that social media is popular, but when you see things, call the police. We had a number of incidents this weekend where people put it out on Facebook, Nextdoor, et cetera, and never bothered to call the police, and they can't do anything to put a stop to it, and it's happening in parking lots and the like. So just really be diligent. You don't have to engage anybody. Just call the police. They're more than happy to come out, check it out, and if it's nothing, it's nothing. But please engage on that. Manager Ferguson? Okay, thank you. We have no public hearings. First item up on old business, action on floodplain damage prevention ordinance text amendment petition. Mr. Huber?
Good evening, everybody. Again, I introduced this text amendment to the flood ordinance last meeting, and no new information has really come up. If you guys would like a refresher or if you have any questions, I'm available, but staff did recommend approval, and it's consistent with our requirements.
Do we have any further questions for Mr. Hubert?
I have
Commissioner Lee?
Could you explain for me one more time, you talked about the freeboard?
Yes.
That term.
Right. It's basically synonymous with a factor of safety.
Okay.
If the 100-year flood per FEMA is modeled all throughout the town already, and so they can give us the elevation with a pretty good degree of accuracy where you can expect that water to rise. And so the freeboard is that extra 2 feet we're asking for in residential circumstances to raise the finished floor elevation to ensure that, if it floods more than the standard storm that they try and plan for, you're still covered and protected.
Okay. Now, can you tell me how with the current language as it is, how long has that been in place?
The previous amendment, I believe, was 2013.
So there's been, one would imagine, quite a bit of development that's gone on according to those standards, which I believe the report said were unintentionally double what you really meant
Correct.
to ask for.
And to that point, it wasn't actually held to that standard because of the initial the language that was it's almost double speak, because they put in the definition the regulatory flood protection was what they related to, but in that definition we already put 2 feet of freeboard in it.
Okay.
So it hadn't been properly established through that from 2013 to now. And so that's why we're trying to go back and make sure it reads correctly, and so then it can be consistently applied.
Is this, will this change make us consistent with our neighboring communities?
Yes, the original was based on Monroe's
Okay.
back in that time. They have, FEMA has changed. There's a 2017 new state ordinance. It stays with 2 feet. Right now, we're staying 2 feet for residential and 1 foot for commercial. That kind of, because commercial isn't an inhabited structure, it's kind of gives a little more flexibility to developers in that regard.
Okay.
Generally, it really hasn't come up in my experience that it's even been close, that anybody's really been on the border. But that is something we can certainly look to in the new UDO when we kind of push the new state ordinance into that document.
Okay, and the intention of, I mean, whenever I hear we've accidentally asked for more safety than we needed, my reaction is this a bad thing? So the benefit of changing this language really is to simplify things for the developer. Is that true?
Well, it's not necessarily that we accidentally asked for more. It's the way we took the intent of the text amendment in 2013 and how they actually did the changes to the ordinance itself. They put it in where it wasn't really clear.
Okay.
It was intended to be clear, but it wasn't, because if you compare the definition of regulatory flood protection elevation, the definition already has a 2 foot in it. Then when you go to the specific language, they talk about adding this 2 feet of freeboard. And so when they talk about it, they don't say to the base flood elevation, they say to that regulatory elevation. And so that's why it was confusing and never really got across until when we started working with the Parks and Rec and they were in the floodplain. We were trying to nail down, well, what do we have to do? And that's where it was clear that 4 feet is what's kind of specified for residential, 2 feet, then where 3 feet it becomes for non-residential. And that's where we realized, okay, this needs to change to get back to the original intent, and that's what brings us here.
Okay, so changing this language, would you say would not in any way make people less safe?
Yeah, it gets to, it is consistent with what's already been done by the state and neighboring municipalities. Basically, it gets to what's fair in trying to let these people develop their properties, but still provide a factor of safety in these instances where emergencies are going to come up.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? If there are no other questions, what action would you like to take? Staff recommended approval with the motions in front of you. What action would you like to take?
Just make the motion to approve the text amendment, TA 006614-2017.
We have a motion to approve the text amendment as presented. Any additional discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Ayes have it, 5-0. Would you like to also make the motion for reasonableness and consistency?
So moved.
As presented in the write-up, you have it? Okay. All right. We have a motion to approve the statement of reasonableness and consistency as presented. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Ayes have it. Thank you. Thank you, Matt. Item 2, action on Millbridge Phase 7D, Major CUP Amendment Petition CU 006546-2017. Welcome back, Tim.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Board of Commissioners. Again, this is for the Millbridge Phase 7D Major CUP Amendment. It's a request by the applicant for a major amendment. The proposed layout is for 72 detached single-family dwellings. And the applicant is proposing to revise the approved layout but keep the remaining previously approved CUP conditions. I don't know if you want me to go back through or just generally cover the presentation.
Do we need to enter into the record the information that they shared with us today?
It's clarification. You can enter it in. We technically aren't in the public hearing, so it's not really necessary because it's not, going to change or modify.
Okay, very good. Any additional questions for Tim? Okay.
I'll move on to the motions.
Okay.
I'll make a motion to approve petition CU 006546-2017 with the following conditions. Zoning construction permits are contingent upon completion of improvements to open Torrey Path Road to meet NCDOT requirements. And B, the notes portion of the application is not in conflict with the UDO or any other ordinances consistent with the approvals from Millbridge.
We have a motion on the table. I believe we have to go through the 4 findings.
Correct. The motion is proper, and that shows what the plans are, including with those 2 conditions. But in order to grant that, you have to make the 4 findings in the affirmative, and then we can do one final motion to complete the motion to grant the conditional use permit amendment.
So you would like me to say that the use requested is among those listed as an eligible conditional use in the district in which the subject property is located or is to be located, that the conditional use will not materially endanger the public health or safety.
I think we have to vote on each one.
Each one?
Yep. So we have the use. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
That the conditional use will not materially endanger the public health or safety if located where proposed and developed according to the plan as proposed.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
That the conditional use meets all required conditions and specifications,
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
and that the location and character of the conditional use, if developed according to the plan as proposed, will be in harmony with the area in which it is to be located and in general conformity with the plan of development of Waxhaw and its environs.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And with that, we have the motion that was originally moved in terms of recommending to approve the petition with the 2 conditions. Any further discussion on that? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Do we need to do reasonable consistency?
Yes. You're on a roll, Commissioner Burrow. About the reasonableness and consistency statement.
The major conditional use permit amendment request is consistent with the comprehensive plan and future planning goals of the town of Waxhaw, is reasonable and in the public interest, as it is in keeping with the comprehensive plan and comprehensive plan policy bridge. And Torrey Path Road will be open to provide emergency access and community connectivity.
So you're making a motion to approve. Okay, so we have a motion to approve the reasonableness and consistency statement as read. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Action on initial zoning petition RZ 006606-2017. Ms. Small, welcome back.
Good evening, Mayor, Commissioners. Adjusting. While I don't have too much new information, I just wanted to use tonight's decision meeting to just offer a little bit of clarity and context about some of the terms and information that we used at the public hearing meeting on January 9th. There was a lot of interchanging of different phrases about mixed use designation, and what that means. So to that effect, I've included the requested additional information about Union County land use standards in the staff report, so it's just updated to reflect what the request was of the board and what that information yielded, which called for some commercial activities on that site. But I also wanted to just provide a little bit of clarity about both the Highway 16 corridor plan and the future land use map for that area. The Highway 16 corridor plan calls for mixed use, so it allows for some scattered commercial activities. And the implementing zoning districts for the G3 mixed use designation, which I outlined on the future land use map, calls for a variety of land use designations such as TC for town center, NMU for neighborhood mixed use, UN2, B for business, and CM for commercial mixed. I just wanted to make sure that there was clarity about those terms. With that being said, I'm here if there are any specific questions. The applicant is here as well and available for that.
Any questions?
I have several.
Commissioner Lee?
Can I have a few, I'm sorry. This is my first zoning thing, so I'm working through it. Did anyone on the staff drive out to the site? Or was everything looked at on computers?
There were a few things. So staff did look at this on the computer. I have driven by the site before, and when the property was posted, a member of planning staff was on site.
Okay. You did not tell us originally what the corresponding town code would be for the Union County R40. Can you tell me what that corresponding town code would be?
Sure, it would vary a little bit. R40 stands for residential 40, which means that 40,000 square feet of minimum acreage are required for Union County land use. With that said, the translation to the town code would vary a little bit for the following reasons. While the town of Waxhaw, R2, calls for a minimum of 40,000 square feet, there are other factors that are not taken into account with the Union County designation, such as the differences in setbacks, lot coverage, building height, and things of that nature. So there is a little bit of discrepancy with regard to that.
Would you say R3 would be comparable?
I think that R2 or R3 would be relatively comparable given the gross acreage, but there's some variation, like I said.
Can you tell me, is it fair to categorize this area as currently mostly zoned residential or mostly zoned commercial?
I think that by and large, based off of the abutting properties themselves, this area is primarily commercial on that side. On the other side of the road, I'd say that there is, more of a residential footprint.
Okay. Were any of those neighborhoods on the other side of the road contacted directly about this zoning issue?
Yes, so as part of the rezoning process, there are property notifications that are required for all properties that fall within a certain buffer boundary, and they were all properly notified in accordance with state statute and the town codes.
Can you tell me what that buffer boundary is?
Sure. I believe it's 300 feet, and to that effect, there were 13 property notifications that were sent, but I believe it's 300.
Okay, so that would have been mostly the people on the same side of the road, or?
It varies a little bit, so if I can get the clicker to work. So you'll see here that there were some property notifications on Colts Gate, and then because there are some larger tracts of land, that also had a little bit of bearing on the notification, but it was still all compliant.
Okay, but not Providence Road over on the other side, Calistoga, not Inverness, any of them?
Yeah, so let me just grab the notification list, just one second. Just to give a little bit of specific context to that.
Thank you.
You looking for the sheet?
Which is in the staff report as well.
In our packet, it's page 202.
Long packet today, but if you'd refer to page 202, thank you, Mayor Maher. That would just give information about which properties were notified in accordance with that buffer, Commissioner Lee.
Okay, thank you. And last question. I promise, I know I've had a lot. The staff recommendation seems to hinge on saying that this that C3 would be consistent with the adjoining properties to the northeast and south. yet those properties are not Zone C3, they're Zone CU C3.
Correct. So those properties are zoned CU-C3. There are a number of properties in the C3 zoning designation that would require, a conditional use permit, but based off of the base zoning use itself of C3, which would be general commercial, would be consistent in staff's opinion.
Even without the CU?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions?
Yes.
I have a question.
Commissioner Burns?
Thank you for answering my questions earlier today.
No problem.
But I wanted to clarify something between the R2 and R3. So R40 in Union County is 40,000 square feet. R2 is 40,000.
Correct. For the town of
R3 is
Waxhaw.
30,000, but you explained to me the setbacks. Could you explain that to
Sure.
the board, the setbacks and the difference in that?
Let me just open my UDO. The R2 zoning designation calls for a minimum lot area of 40,000 square feet with the following setback requirements: a minimum front and rear setback of 30 feet. And then there is a little bit of difference in terms of the side setback depending on the orientation of the lot. So if it's an interior lot, in terms of its frontage, there's a minimum of 10 feet. And for corner lots and street side lots, in terms of their facade, there is a minimum of 20 feet. R1 calls for 30 and 30 for front and rear respectively, and then there's the tiered system of 15 for interior lots, 25 for corner lots with a straight side, and R3 and R4 have a little bit of that variation as well, with R3 calling for 30, 30 for front and rear, 10 and 20 respectively for interior and corner for the side setbacks, and R4 is a little bit more nuanced, with calling for 20 for front setback, 30 for rear, 10 for side interior, 20 for side corner, with some differences in terms of the lot area depending on how many units you'll have on site. So it is a little bit different than the Union County base zoning.
Commissioner Westlake?
Just for clarification, did you check with the county's land use plan on the property to the north? I think that's what you're talking about right now.
Sure. So in the staff report on the last 2 pages, that kind of contemplates what the Union County land use map calls for in that area in general, which by and large called for a little bit of mixed use consistently throughout that area on the subject parcel at hand and for the properties just around them.
Okay. Where are we at in the 60 days of needing to assign the zoning?
Sure. So this property was annexed on November 28th, 2017, which I believe, Chaplain, check my math, I believe that puts us around maybe 54 days or so.
54 days. Okay. And Chaplain, is there an ordinance that requires us to assign the zoning requested by the applicant?
No, but you do need to assign zoning tonight.
Okay.
Didn't want to answer both of those because otherwise we'll go beyond the 60 days and there'll be effectively no zoning on the property. So you do want to place some zoning tonight.
Commissioner Burrow? Any questions?
Same questions.
Okay. What do you want to do with it?
I have a statement I'd like to read before making a motion.
Your
Can
statement?
I do that? Well, I wanted to explain a motion, or my reasoning for a motion. Can I do that? Or,
I'm not.
okay,
Do you want to make a motion and then explain why you want to make a motion behind it?
okay,
Is that what you want to do?
yes.
Okay, so I will entertain your motion.
I would like to make a motion to zone the property C1.
We have a motion on the table to zone the property C1. Let's open that up for discussion.
Does Commissioner Westlake want to explain why she has come to a C1 rezoning of that property?
Okay, so, yes. At the last meeting, I asked many questions because I was very concerned about the residential across the street and in the surrounding areas. I feel that there is no transitional zoning between residential and commercial. And even though we have a comprehensive plan that sets that as a G3 sector, there is no transitional zoning at the top part of that corridor. Let me just go into a little bit of other things that I've checked into. So even though the property to the south is zoned CUC3, this property cannot be zoned with the CU designation of that. So the CU zoning allows the board to have more of a say of what goes on these properties, but the straight C3 zoning comes with a list of by right uses, and only certain types of businesses would need board approval. The types of businesses most concerning to the residents of Waxhaw, such as gas stations and fast food drive-thrus, could be allowed with board approval under C3 zoning. The property to the north, currently zoned residential, is for sale and in the county jurisdiction, so unless this property annexes into the town of Waxhaw, we will have no say if or how it would be rezoned. Recent actions by the county do show their willingness to rezone from residential to commercial. For this reason, I believe the zoning of this property next door could have influence over a zoning decision by the county. I believe both the county and the town of Waxhaw have that property designated NMX in the land use plans, and for this reason, along with CUC3 zoning to the south, show a commercial zoning does seem reasonable. As some residents have requested an R2 zoning, this seems unrealistic for an acre lot on Highway 16. Another suggestion of OIS seems too restrictive and is seldom used. I understand the need for the town to follow our comprehensive plans and understand the reasoning behind the recommendation of staff and the planning board, as it is their role to show consistency with these plans. However, as the board who represents the people, I believe it is our role to decide what is best for the town and its citizens and consider the future and not just what is the intended use of the property today. In the Highway 16 corridor plan, this property is located at the top of the general commercial C3 district. The plan did not allow for any transitional zoning from residential to commercial. It is, of my opinion, an acceptable zoning would be of a neighborhood business zoning of C1, which eliminates gas stations, convenience stores, and fast food restaurants completely. I did contact the School of Government, who advised me that as long as the correct process was followed and as long as we do not have an ordinance stating we must rezone to fit the comprehensive plan, the board can assign a zoning that is less intrusive than the request by the applicant. I have asked staff to contact the applicant to see if their intended use would fit with the C1 designation and if that would satisfy them. And if so, if the request for C3 was denied, I was going to make the motion of C1. That's how I came up with it. So there I got my statement.
There you go. Any further discussion? Comments, questions? If not, do you have a comment or question?
Question, not to Commissioner Westlick, but the applicant is present. Is it permissible to ask the applicant, or do we need to just vote on the motion?
Well, we have a motion in play, number one. Number two, we cannot ask and demand that ask the applicant and demand or have him or her comment on the potential use.
Okay.
So it gets a little dicey. Do I have that correct?
Yeah, they can't state which particular use they intend on in a C1 or C3 or any zoning. You have to anticipate any and all uses when you rezone. Right. And there's case law to that effect, because sometimes a board would say, oh, well, they say they're only, either there are 25 uses, the applicant said they would only use it for this, and there are about 15 uses that were improper, and because the board didn't consider those, you can't, and it would also be illegal contract zoning, and you can't bind them. I mean, you could, if the board was inclined to see if they're agreeable to C1, but
that was my question.
That's a board prerogative. It's a little bit rare when you're in discussion after a motion, but you're the board.
What say you?
Well,
Do you want to suspend the rules and see if the applicant wants to comment on whether they would be amenable to C1?
Or we can vote.
Well, no, my question is, do you want to suspend the rules?
No.
Okay, so we do not want to suspend the rules. So we have a motion on the table. Any further discussion on the motion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
Nay.
Okay, so the motion carries 3-2. Did you get the, okay. Okay, and now we have to have a motion to approve the reasonableness and consistency statement. And so, Commissioner Westlake, would you like to make that motion, please?
So I make the motion to deny? Or
No, to approve the reasonableness and consistency statement.
I make the motion that I'm not really sure what I'm...
To approve the reasonable and
To
consistency
approve the
statement.
reasonable and consistency statement. Do I need to read the whole thing?
No,
Okay.
that reads as presented and as on the board.
Well, we have three, and it would be, instead of the request, that the zoning,
The proposed zonings?
that the zoning is consistent with the comprehensive plan in the future. The first one, if you want to read that.
Okay, I make the motion, the request is consistent with the comprehensive plan and future planning goals of the town of Waxhaw, and is reasonable and in the public interest. It will provide for a mixture of, do I have to read all that? No?
If you agree with all of it, with the C1,
Okay.
yes.
Okay, we have that motion. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
Nay.
Again, reasonableness and consistency passes 3-2. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Okay, on to new business. Kurt White, CDBG grant, contract and project ordinance.
Hello. Good evening, Mayor, Commissioners. We had the presentation. Thank you. Okay, so tonight we're going to, excuse me, I'm sorry. Tonight we're going to talk about the Waxhaw Marvin sidewalk project. We're going to just go a brief overview of the project and talk about then how it's funded, and then how we've some of the consultant selection that we've done thus far. This is a CDBG grant-funded project. So a little bit background about what that is. The Federal Department of Housing and Urban Development has a program called the Community Development Block Grant Program, CDBG, and those funds can be used for a variety of purposes: public infrastructure, housing, rehab, community education programs, variety of different uses for these kind of funds. And in 2016, Union County actually became an entitlement grantee of this program, which means now every year they will receive an allocation of funds. It's based on population. And so that's very fortunate for the county, and it's good for the municipalities in the county as well, because there will be that opportunity to be able to apply for these kind of funds going forward, as long as those municipalities continue to meet the income and some of the other requirements that the program has. So Waxhaw would participate in this program as a sub-recipient of the Union County grant. And several other municipalities are also already on board with this new process. So what we did was, once the county made us aware of this opportunity at the end of 2016, we started looking at what kind of projects we might have within the town that could qualify for the program. Because since it is federal money, the very first question we have to ask is, what are the minimum qualifications, and do we even have anything that would fit their criteria? And so the specific criteria for this program had to be a public improvement, and it had to be benefiting areas of low to moderate income according to U.S. Census data. So those were the two main requirements that we had to consider. And once we did that, if you look here, and I know it's kind of small, but Waxhaw actually only has one qualifying census tract based on 2010 census data, which is what the Department of Housing and Urban Development is still using. And this is this census tract here, which is roughly bounded by Waxhaw Marvin Road to Kensington to the South Carolina line and Highway 75 there. And so this is our qualifying census tract where the low to moderate income percentage as of 2010 was greater than 51%. We actually also, based on some of our existing planning documents and some of the needs we'd heard in the community, we also did look at the opportunity for an area that did not fit into the automatic qualifying census tract. It was along Howie Mine Road. There was a sidewalk project that appears in the downtown neighborhoods plan. And we really felt that the condition of that sidewalk was definitely warranted some improvement and could be a great opportunity for the grant. However, since it did not automatically qualify, we had to go through a process to see if we could verify on the ground that the majority of the beneficiaries of the sidewalk would be low to moderate income. So there is a way to kind of work around those stated income requirements. However, we weren't able to validate the income of the project area after doing a survey and some community engagement. So that's why at this point our projects that we're going to be able, or the kind of projects that we'll be able to do will be confined to this census tract here, which is the Waxhaw Marvin Road area. That's great news as well, though, because the downtown neighborhoods plan mentioned 3 neighborhoods: the East Side, the Hillcrest, and Waxhaw Marvin neighborhoods. So this is an excerpt from that plan, the Downtown Neighborhoods Plan of 2014, and the project area, which we'll zoom in on in a second here. This is Fallondale Road, which is part of Millbridge, and this is Utah Drive, which is off of directly off of Waxhaw Marvin Road. The project that we've submitted through the county's annual action plan, and which was approved by the county, the Board of County Commissioners in the early summer, would be for 1,742 feet, about a third of a mile of sidewalk that would connect Utah Drive to Fallondale Road. And the interesting thing about this is that would complete the connection between Millbridge and actually downtown, because that's the last gap there is between Millbridge and the core of downtown Waxhaw. So as you see, there's going to be increasing growth over not only what's there currently, but over the next and the kind of the planning period here. And so it's a very good opportunity for the town to be able to participate in this. How is it funded? Well, Union County will receive the funds from HUD, and then the county provides those funds to Waxhaw as a subrecipient of that grant. It's a reimbursement grant. It's a 100% reimbursement grant, with the exception of the town does have to pay for an environmental review. But so that $235,224 is for design and construction. That would come from HUD through Union County, and it would be reimbursed along the way. So as the town is invoiced for design or construction, we would then submit that and be reimbursed for those costs. We will be eligible to apply for funding again for the 2018 action plan, and at this time we will, as we start the design process, we will get a better sense of whether this amount here is sufficient for construction. So we would have the opportunity to ask for additional funds potentially, and if not, then there's an opportunity to apply for other projects kind of each year going forward. But this particular project, Waxhaw Marvin Sidewalk, here's how we've had it. Our best estimates at the staff level of what it's going to be and what has actually been approved is this amount by the Union County. What we've done so far, we did complete the environmental review, which was that $5,500 you saw. That was a requirement that the county had that before we could even proceed, that we would have to complete that environmental review to ensure there was no adverse impacts, that a sidewalk would not cause any adverse impacts in that area or require any kind of remediation. And we have also issued an RFQ for the design as well of the sidewalk and selected a consultant for that. So we have not executed that contract yet, but we have gone ahead and selected that consultant. And so the project is really teed up and ready to go, pending the action requested here by staff tonight. So,
Questions? Commissioner Lee?
Can you tell us a little bit about how you selected that consultant?
Sure. So we have a staff committee who was assigned to selecting a consultant, and we issued the RFQ in accordance with the federal guidelines. Used that template, and then we actually used a rating matrix, a quantitative rating matrix that is approved through Union County and actually the Central Atlantic Council of Governments to kind of rank the consultants. This particular consultant, Robinson and Sawyer, has extensive experience with CDBG grants as well, which is helpful to have someone who kind of knows how to jump through those federal hoops.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Mayor Pro Tem?
Just a question regarding the data that you received, and you stated that you did go through Howie Mine, but you were unable to obtain the necessary information. Was that information from the residents that you needed to submit for this grant?
Right. We had to validate that. First of all, we had to calculate how many residents would benefit from the sidewalk, and then we had to be able to validate that I believe it was 70% would be of the low to moderate income threshold, which is based on family size. So it's different for 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 in the household. And then we actually had to use surveys to ask people for that information and then provide that to the county.
Okay, so moving forward with any type of project, be it Howie Mine or Hillcrest, which are some of the areas that you're also looking at, you're going to need more resident cooperation in providing that survey information in order to get the grant funding that they need for these sidewalk projects moving forward.
That's correct. Any area that it does not automatically qualify, which means any area for Waxhaw, it's any area that's not in that census tract, we would have to do, there would be a good deal of community involvement required to justify it.
Okay, and moving forward with the grant funding, I know you said there's a 2018 action plan, and every year you can go back to submit for funding for these other projects, including these other two areas as well.
Yes, every year that Waxhaw chooses to participate in the program, there's actually a couple of municipalities in the county who have decided not to participate because they have no qualifying census tracts. So it'll be, we'll have to decide to keep participating each year.
Other questions?
I do have a question about Hillcrest. So is there a plan to do Hillcrest next or after this?
We haven't really, we haven't identified what a next project would be at this point.
I have another question. So with the funding that you're asking for the Waxhaw Marvin project, can you go back, if you do get the surveys or the data or the information for the east side or the Hillcrest, can those be submitted in conjunction, or do you have to do them separately? Do you have to finish the Waxhaw Marvin project first and then go back for funding for, say, the east side or for Hillcrest? Or can you do grant proposals or funding for those at the same time, say in 2018 or 2019?
So I would have to check with our county representative about that. I don't know if we could administer two grants at the same time. What happens is the county's only allocated. It's once you take out administrative cost, it's $600,000 or $700,000, and that's divided up between the 5 municipalities that are competing for or participating in the grant. So we are kind of competing with the other ones. It would be up to the probably the Board of County Commissioners as to how to distribute those each year. But yeah, I would have to get final clarification on that, though. Yeah.
Other questions?
Oh, sorry. I did want to say this project should not take, should not span multiple. I wouldn't expect this to last much longer than 2019. So this isn't going to tie up Waxhaw's participation for. It's a relatively straightforward project.
Any other questions? Staff recommends approval, and they've listed out the 3 motions. Does anybody care to make those motions?
I'll make the motion to approve an agreement made and by between Union County and the town of Waxhaw for sub-recipient CDBG funding.
And would you be amenable
Three
to,
as well.
to include 2 and 3 with it?
Sure.
Okay. So we have a motion to approve the agreement, and well, all 3 motions packaged together. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Ayes have it.
Thank you.
Dina Sabinski, action related to Town Creek Park improvements.
Good evening. Good evening, everyone. I'm here tonight to ask for the Town Creek and Nesbit Park improvements that we have coming up. First, we're going to talk about Town Creek. Our first phase is a shelter plus a multi-generational playground that meets our theme for Waxhaw, our rustic elegance, and to meet the needs of our citizens with a gathering place as well as some activity area and some fitness area. The motion for tonight would be to establish the capital project ordinance and to allow the town manager to authorize the contract on the improvements of the facility.
First request is pertaining to Town Creek, and specifically $151,795.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, no, I just wanted to clarify,
Okay.
because she had kind of merged the 2 together. Discussion.
I just have a question for you, Dina.
Yes.
So the money in this initial request for Town Creek is predominantly split between the picnic shelter and the playground?
Yes.
Can you give me a rough idea of how much of that is each one?
Yes. So we're about $57,000 for the shelter itself, and that's complete from supplies to building it. And then the playground is around 90, a little over 90. And that is also construction, everything together, and that's permitting as well. Everything's included in this price
Is
on that part.
Correct me if help me out if I'm confusing my playgrounds. At an earlier work session last year, you spoke about a playground that would be, we would purchase plans and we, the town, would put it together. Is that this one?
No, ma'am.
Okay.
That is the Kaboom grant that you're speaking of, and that would finish out this area where there's going to be 3 playground pod areas.
Okay.
So this is the first 2, and the Kaboom would finish out the playground area.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Other questions? Commissioner Burns.
So the multi-year fund for the capital project, explain that, please.
So just in case that we don't finish up the project within this fiscal year, the money's moved over to next budget.
Okay, but the same amount of money. So this is the 151, and the other grant, how much was the other grant for?
It was $15,000.
15?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I just want to make a comment. I I'm for parks. Everybody knows that I'm a park proponent, but I just have to question spending, what, 65,000 on that piece of property, when many people, including several on this board, have suggested it would be better as a dog park and put this money toward the downtown park or the 34-acre park or the Pine Tree Park at Wasaki. I'm just wondering, what is the intent of putting so much on this small piece of property that does flood periodically when it rains? That could damage some of the equipment or whatever. What's the reasoning behind that? I'm just curious.
Not a problem. In the last 2 budget cycles, the funds have been allocated to do improvements for this park. With the survey that happened last spring, the citizens has asked for community space, and when I came on board evaluating what we can do to bring that that community space to our citizens at the budget allowed.
And how many parking spaces are there?
I am not 100% on that. There's at least 20, 25.
Okay, so for the beginning of a community, actually community park or space that would be used by the community, 20 parking spaces, that's not going to be a whole lot of community.
With I understand that with the vehicle community getting to that park, but we are luckily planning all those new sidewalks and on trails to meet up to this park.
Okay, and is I know there's been some mention of that being a future trailhead for the trail that goes through there and into Mill Bridge. Is that still a plan?
Yes, ma'am. That would be in a phase 2 or 3.
And it
on
would
the
be
back
a trailhead
end.
as is?
It's a trail. It's a Carolina Thread Trail right now.
Okay, yeah. But that portion, and maybe I'm wrong, correct me if I'm wrong, that portion there would be kind of a stopping off place, or
It
for
could
people
be
that are
like
doing
a
the trail.
resting area, meeting place area.
So when that happens, there would be no more expenditure in putting more things in that area versus another park that we want to develop.
With the upkeep with any park, you're going to have operating costs.
Additional expenditure. of
Expenditures.
that.
So there would be the additional, the one playground with the Gaboon grant is if possible, and then the addition of the connection, the back end of that park to align with our thread trail that goes to the back end of Nesbitt.
Now, there's not any plans to purchase that log cabin there, is there? There has been mention of that, so I want to make sure, but that's not a plan in the future, because that would be a big expenditure for, and reasoning why.
I think it would be up to the board at future if they would want a facility at that park for restrooms, and look at that as a viable option or not.
But is that option being discussed?
That is not currently on the plan right now, but it could be an option if the board...
Has it been discussed?
There's understanding that that could be a viable option for a bathroom.
Thank you.
Additional questions? If no additional questions, would anyone like to make appropriate motion?
I'll make the motion to approve the establishment of the multi-year fund and capital project ordinance for improvements at Town Creek Park Phase 1 with a total budget of $151,795, including the authorization for the town manager to execute the contract with Carolina Recreation and Design for $147,284.60.
We have a motion on the table to recommend the approval of the capital the multi-year capital project ordinance. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries 4-1.
Okay.
Nesbitt Park.
Nesbitt Park. We're very excited about the improvements for Nesbitt. In our budget this year, there's a allotted amount of funds for improvements for this park. After taking an assessment of the needs and the request from the citizens of having restrooms at our beautiful athletic facility, we are requesting to move forward with the multi-year capital project ordinance and to allow the manager to authorization of the contract for the building of our new restrooms, concessions, and storage unit for Nesbitt.
Discussion, questions, motions?
I'll make the motion to approve the establishment of the multi-year fund and capital project ordinance with a total budget of $340,000 for the Nesbitt Park Improvements Phase 1, including the authorization for the manager to execute the contract with Carolina Recreation and Design for $256,920.10.
So a motion on the table. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Ayes have it, 5-0. Thank you, Dina.
Thank you, sir.
We have no closed session topics, so with that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.